What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the lovely city of Fort Worth, Texas. We get into politics, business, culture, news. If it impacts you as a Fort Worthian, we discuss it. We give you one big story, 3 short stories, wins, losses, and actions. Today, it's me, Ann, and Wesley, because we have a big week to talk, and we're already getting spicy, wondering how big is the moment. But we will decide today, as we talk with you and talk with us, about what is going on in Fort Worth.
And also, we are here on Friday.
Good call.
Instead of our regular recording time of Sunday. So
Yes.
a little bit early. So if something happens on Saturday or Sunday,
Yes.
we won't be discussing it on Monday when this drops.
If Governor Abbott brings some troops to Fort Worth, we would not know right now.
Well, I think he's bringing them to Austin.
Yeah. I'm kind of jealous.
No. All right. What's our big story today?
Well, our big story today is this week, Mayor Mattie Parker has gone full-blown bear hug the far right of her party, which, depending on how you look at that, to me, she took her last, I guess, secret weapon that she had. Her secret weapon is playing the white moderate lady, innocence, and the fact that she fully bear hugged Mercy Culture, and Mercy Culture showed up, and she didn't say anything about what Nate Scatsline said. She didn't say it was wrong. She didn't say anything. It shows how desperate and how, to me, it shows how we got to stop seeing her as this like moderate savior of society. And that's probably the biggest part of the story, but that's like the intro. What would you guys say from your lens?
Well, I think that there was some comments about how she said she had been inviting people to come to council meetings to see what happens at council meetings. And so there was an invitation to a lot of people to show up at the last council meeting. And I don't know if we need to go back for some context in this.
Context,
this is usually
yes.
what
Correct,
Wesley
correct.
reminds us of.
Thank you.
But a couple of council meetings ago, there was the vote on reducing the number of public comment meetings to be held. And I was out of town, so I wasn't there in person, but lots of people showed up to speak out against doing that. And then there was a retort back from the mayor to one of the speakers, Patrice Jones, regarding the casket that had been left on her lawn back in 2022. And so that got a lot of the folks that were there to talk about public comment fired up, because that felt like a threat. And so there was a lot of concern around that. So there were a lot of people coming to this meeting to reiterate the concerns about public comment, and also to ask for a different response from the mayor regarding the things that she had said. And nobody got that different response. I think she continued to say that she didn't apologize for saying it, and that that's not what she meant. And to many people's concerns and comments at the meeting, kind of made herself the victim versus having put someone else in danger with the remarks that she made.
Yeah.
Which was, Patrice, I still have your casket. So we're talking about that topic.
Right.
That got elevated relatively quickly from then hit the news. We had Patrice on here. The newspapers wrote about it. They got the police report.
Well, let's do one thing at a time
Yes.
here. So Monday, before the public comment meeting on Tuesday, Nate Scatsline, who is a state rep and also a pastor at Mercy Culture, he put out a video claiming that he was in a meeting with County Judge Tim O'Hare, with Mayor Mattie Parker, and a lot of religious leaders in Fort Worth.
And also City Council member Blaylock.
Yes, thank you. And he was quoting Mattie Parker saying that she says that City Council is under spiritual warfare, and that she's received a lot of death threats, and that she was asking Mercy Culture to come to council and pray over it. And I don't know, it was a weird video. Also, he said the video showed to come to Commissioner's Court. So
And he said City Council,
Yes.
and it was in the evening, and Commissioner's Court is in the daytime, so
Yes.
it was a little confusing.
had
The other thing I noticed about the video he put out is while he was talking, they flashed pictures of 3 council members while he was saying the thing that he said about people receiving death threats, and the 3 council members that he showed on that video were Deborah Peoples, Chris Nettles, and
Elizabeth?
Elizabeth Beck.
Wow, I didn't notice that part.
I noticed it just like a couple of days ago when I watched it again. So I thought that was weird.
Oh, yeah.
Because his words were that Mattie had told him that people electeds were receiving death threats, and then in his video he specifically showed those 3.
Was he trying to insinuate they were the ones sending death threats or
I
getting
don't
death
know.
threats?
It just was weird to me.
Yep.
And it's important to know there was 2 videos. There was one where Nate Scatzline actually spoke in the congregation on the Sunday this was the main story of the biblical time of we all need to go and pray on Fort Worth and support our mayor because our city's in spiritual warfare. So there was also an action where there are thousands of people who sit in the congregation to come to Fort Worth. And I think what I tell people when this dropped when we saw this on Monday, the immediately thing I talked about that went to me was like, this was not on my bingo card. Because one, it's just the level of desperation that they had to bring out their darkest card, like the biggest drag into the show. And it's like, to me, that is so dangerous because then I started thinking about Patrice Jones. Because if Mattie was going to bring out far radical right people to a congregation who is the same people who came to the Charlie Kirk rally and talked about a civil war, I was like, holy crap, how do we get people out? So I started messaging everybody. I said, we need to make sure we're there. Now, good news is not a lot of people I feel like were there for Mercy Culture.
I think there were quite a few people, but nobody signed up to speak.
Yeah, they were in the audience, but...
Right. And I think they were saying, we weren't called here to speak, we were called here to just pray. And so there were people doing that, I believe.
The analysis that I feel is that, number one concerning thing is the mayor reached out to Mercy Culture. But I think if I was looking at how they were chessboarding, it's because she's asked the establishment Fort Worth to speak. So, hey, I'm going to get 10 people to speak. They're going to speak, but that doesn't fill up the audience.
Yep.
So now I needed to figure out the audience situation. And I genuinely believe that those establishment members, some of them, did not know a part about the Mercy Culture also being there. And so it was a very awkward council where there was all these like Mercy Culture people, yet like establishment people were speaking, and they weren't really speaking on anything but giving updates. And so I think, to me, if I was the establishment, one, I'd be pissed at the mayor because you now are like, I would argue that you associated, let's just say all 10 of those people or 12 people knew Mercy Culture was there. Then the Fort Worth establishment, or the Fort Worth way, whatever we want to call it, is as equally as, to me, accountable and in trouble as the mayor, because then you're okay with like what you keep telling us is that the status quo, and the status quo leads us to becoming more far right and accepting those things. But I believe people that were there, I'm not going to say names because I don't want to call them out, but like I genuinely think some of those people had no clue what was going on and was just told by the mayor to do something and walked into a booby trap. And but if you did know, if the people did know that the mayor asked Mercy Culture to be there, and you as a Fort Worth Way establishment still wouldn't go up to the mayor and said, unfortunately, this time I can't. This was a perfect pass to stand up for the right thing. So I hope most of those people did not know Mercy Culture was there. Because if they did and still went along with the show, that is showing that this is not just a mayor problem. This is a Fort Worth systemic problem, how we move, and the whole thing needs to be gutted.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn because I think that it is important to share with the broader community the things that these partners that work with the city do, because they do good work in the community. But it was weird to be brought in at a public comment meeting to do an update that is restricted to 3 minutes.
Which normally happens in work sessions.
Right. These are usually presentations that are done in work session and that's open to the public so people can see. So this is a higher platform for them to be seen at a council meeting, or they're done like with a proclamation being presented and that sort of thing. So it was weird and awkward for them to be there having signed up all different times. So they're being called amongst all the other people that were there for other things. But I'm not mad at people coming, a whole bunch of people come into community engagement meetings, like meetings where you can give public comment. I think elevating that work is important. But to your point, I don't think that was an appropriate way to bring them into that.
Yeah, because it seems like
as cover.
Yes, exactly. It seems
that's what happened.
Very,
I think it was intentional.
Yes,
yeah, I think it was too.
Very clear that Mattie had invited all these organizations that were doing good in the city that she could claim some ownership of, because she knew that so many people were going to show up to public comment and demand accountability, demand her apologize, demand more right to speak, and she was nervous that it was going to make her look bad. And so, and I feel bad for him because like they were used as a political prop to make her look good. And these are employees for these organizations. One of them was my cousin who works for Fort Worth ISD. When I saw him, I'd never seen him at a council meeting before. And he mentioned that he was voluntold to be there because there's a handshake agreement between Fort Worth ISD and Parks Department that was just now formalized, and they need to come thank the city. Yeah. And I'm like, that's great. I love that exists. But why here? Why now? It's not a good use of everyone's time, and it's, I don't know, just...
But call it for what it is. This is how Putin moves. This is how Z moves. Hey, you do and be my mouthpiece so I look good in front of people.
To me, it also highlights the fact that we're relying on nonprofits to do a whole lot of stuff that we can't necessarily ensure sustainability of that, because nonprofits get their money from grants and from foundations, and those things shift and change. Whereas if you have your government doing these safety net programs and these literacy programs and all this stuff, then that is rely upon a tax base that is more stable. Yeah. I mean, it's like the whole argument that came up with JPS and their budget and whether or not they could depend on things that were shifting and changing. And so I think that just, I love that we have these public-private partnerships and that people are doing good work in the community, but I don't love that we're shifting away from a consistent, stable ability to deliver these services to people in an uncertain time when they can't necessarily get the funding to do all the things that they need to do.
The other big, I think, I thought this was a complete week. This week was a win for the people of Fort Worth.
Yes.
I have no idea how the mayor gets out of this. I don't know how people don't wake up and see that Fort Worth has some real issues of moving more and more to the right in a time that we should be standing up against fascism and Donald Trump, especially as a city that is actually Democratic or progressive and votes that way,
and growing and majority minority.
Yes. And so the part that was, okay, Mayor Parker showed her true colors. She's no longer, you can play, but she's like the nice moderate. Nope, that's gone. The next thing is, we don't know about the Fort Worth establishment and how much they're committed to the game as well, because I would go 50-50 knew what was up, because some of them keep up, but I do think some of them are busy and didn't know what was going on. But then the other part that I thought was good for the people was Mercy Culture wasn't... I think if I was a congregation member at Mercy Culture and I was sitting there and I listened to Nate Scatzline speak and I was like, spiritual warfare, I want to fight it. And then they came to the city hall and we were all like, we want public comments.
And they were like, yes, that sounds good.
Yeah.
We literally had people sitting behind us that we could hear, and they were saying things that we could tell they were, in line with some of the Mercy Culture points. But then when people started making points about more public engagement and all of that, they were like, oh, yeah.
They were applauding to Chris Tackett's presentation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it was like...
because he came with a solution.
But it was a perfect moment because the mayor was trying to villainize not just Patrice Jones, but the progressive community of the city, and said, hey, you guys got to watch this show.
But not even just progressive. I mean, just anyone fighting for our rights as citizens.
Yeah. And so they all come, they got their popcorn out, they're ready to watch. And it's like, we would like to have more than 10 public comments. And it was like, our sign said, restore public comments. Like, it's not like, and so Nate Scatzline got bamboozled these people. And I imagine some of these people are like, maybe
we're on the wrong
side of all this. Like, maybe this is, and then this is how you know how bad of a leader Nate Scatzline is that he doesn't even speak. And then he stays quiet on Twitter and everywhere else and doesn't say anything. Because I even think this is why it was such a win for the people. It showed Mayor Parker's true colors. It showed that the Fort Worth establishment is dangerous and will do whatever they need to do to stay in power. and stay in comfort of the existing city's establishment. 3 is that mercy culture is not as active or as like this big scary beast, and that there's more people-powered people, and we can go and win this fight of a new Fort Worth. So I feel like at the end of the day, this was a historic week, but I think also it's only historic if Fort Worth actually lives up to its potential and we all get up out of our seats and say this is unacceptable.
And I think it needs to be sustained.
Yeah.
Because we have seen the people come up when faced with something that they're concerned about and sustained for a period of time. But then as things kind of either got placated slightly, some people would drop off, and then it just kind of peters out. And so I think that the sustainability part is really important. And that means working together, not burning ourselves out, bringing new people in to join for whatever level that they're willing to participate, and all of that. So,
and that was the historic moment as well, with like one shout out, like just the community. The biggest win is the community showed up for Patrice Jones.
Yes. Well, and I want to give a big shout out to how many folks from the 817 Gather came out for public comment. A lot of them, this is their first time to speak, and it's really exciting to see people who care so much about the city turn that care and worry into action and progress.
It was such a historical moment because everyone played their part to show that this is enough is enough. I mean, even Bob Willoughby was about as good as I've ever seen him. Like, he was like, because that's what, like, Mattie was trying to say, oh, Patrice is going to show up. Let me show the other people what's going to happen. And Patrice was elegant. Patrice was powerful. And then it's like, oh, Bob is going to give me the thing I need all these people to see. And no, Bob didn't.
Nope.
And everyone was, like, I was probably the craziest one, and that wasn't even that crazy. But everyone else, Wesley was crying. Like, it was all on par. Everybody was doing their thing, and it was just like
real quick.
perfect.
I do want to say that if there are any, if anyone didn't see, I spent my public comment reading a letter on behalf of a city employee who was too afraid to speak. And I want to say, if there are any other city employees who feel passionately about wanting to communicate these things to city leadership but don't feel safe doing it, reach out to me, Wesley Kirk on Instagram. I'm happy to help speak on your behalf, because
and we can get others too.
I literally did the same thing when they invited me to the young leadership, and I was like a keynote there. I said, y'all, if you need cover, I understand what it is to be city staff, where you get beat about the head and shoulders by the communities half the time because you're sent out there with not all the resources you need and not the ability to do your job to the full extent, and then elected officials just throw you under the bus if they have any inkling that they're going to end up having their constituents mad at them. Not everybody all the time, but
And please, I mean, I think if we had 20 anonymous letters show up and wanted to speak at public comments, we could go get 20. There was people. What was so powerful about that room? There was people in that room whose presence was just powerful, and would have probably spoke up any more, like, maybe needed time, but just standing in their presence was good. There were so many people in the community, and when I'm telling you guys, like, it was such a beautiful day. Yes, were people there from our camp who was like very passionate about making this a progressive city, who listens to the pod, who's been calling out what the mayor did. But there was working class people. Someone came from Dallas. I mean, the one that hit me the point, and it showed me how important Patrice Jones's work is the lady who came up and spoke about the porta potties at Tay's parade. And that lady, I don't know. She just came as a concerned resident about a direct situation. And I think when we talk about values, when we talk about what this should be about, is that everyone should have equitable porta potties at their events.
That they're renting from the city.
Yeah, that they're renting from the city.
Well, the fact that our parks, the bathroom facilities at our public parks are porta potties in a fancy surround is something that has driven me insane for the entire time that I've been paying attention to what facilities we have in our parks.
Yeah.
Well, this is what she said was such a perfect example of why more public comment is so necessary.
100%.
Is that when you have an issue that the city needs to deal with, and you're hitting roadblocks going the right way, you should be able to speak to the city council as a whole, be like, here's my issue, here's a solution. You are the people who can find a solution the fastest. Let me tell it to you.
Yeah.
Having to wait a month or two to get to that,
When I was limited to the 3 minutes, I had a few things I wanted to touch on, and I was really wanting to go back in history and talk about the progress that we've made in the past that has kind of been rolling backwards. And to your point about reading a letter from a city employee, I had some help on what I said too from people who have been in Fort Worth for a really long time and don't really want to be the one front and center putting their face on the video. And I'm happy to do that too for anybody else that has concerns that they would like me to share. But one of the other points that I wanted to make that I didn't get a chance to after going through that timeline was that I think that we have reduced public comment to being something to be just dealt with, put up with, and we put people who get to the point where they have to go to city council and make these statements in a category of, either being unhinged or, off their rocker or don't know how to go about reaching the people they need to reach. And if they would just call the right city staff person or whatever. And I just think that
how are you supposed to know who that is?
I just think that we need to have public comment be something that is embraced and encouraged.
Yes.
As someone who works really hard to get the city to do more and better engagement, I don't think we need to be reducing the engagement that we already do. And I think that we need to find more ways to allow people to have a say about what the city does going forward. And so making public comment like normal again,
yes,
I think is something that we need to work on.
Especially because I feel like the more that you limit it, the more you have all these pent up frustrations. And then when you finally do meet it, it's just, a month and a half of anger coming down in 3 minutes. Whereas if there were more, it could be more frequently addressed and we could work on more proactive stuff rather than reactive stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's also important to know, I've actually heard the final number of people who signed up for public comments was 78. We've been saying 72, but I've heard it was 78. And so when you think, and we were 80% of those, like the people standing for either Patrice, standing for public comments, or saying that this is unacceptable, mayor, for extremism.
There are also a surprising amount of pastors speaking up about
100%.
Religious freedom and like, why are you going to Mercy Culture? Why weren't mosques invited, synagogues? Why are you partnering with the far right rather than the religious community as a whole?
Yeah, the retired Episcopal priest was amazing.
Yeah, excellent.
He was pointing out, well, I think this is a great trend that you've started here, but I sure hope that you're going to invite somebody else to be in the room next time.
And that's what I also think is interesting, is like this supposedly happened in a room with all these other church faith leaders, but why was Nate Scatzline and Mercy Culture the only ones there? Like, where was the rest of them if this was allegedly like, a group conversation to be had? And again, the mayor did not really say anything about Nate Scatzline's comments. I mean, no one from her team. But here's what always, like, to me, what I'm still frustrated about from Fort Worth, because this is how powerful her spirit is like immediately when Nate Scatzline's comments came out, the first comments from all types of people, by the way, this isn't just white people, this is black people, brown people, was, I don't think she really say that. I don't know. It's like how fast we are to protect her innocence is such a marinated propaganda in our head that we have not unhacked from our membranes. And it's just so crazy how much leeway we give her to doing some very dangerous things. Just look at the last 3 weeks. Agitating Charlie Kirk propaganda for that far right base who's screaming a civil war in the middle of downtown by a letter with Elizabeth Beck, and then telling a black woman, I have your casket, and then calling Nate Scatzline and Mercy Culture. We're talking 21 days. And the idea that people are like, oh, we're a little hard on her. Like, I'm just like, that energy is the thing that has to get out of our brains. Like, and that is something that we have to accept, that we are in a city that is in lock and step and allowing Donald Trump and authoritarian fascism exist and take over our country. And we need to start stepping up and calling it out as a whole, boldly, unapologetically, not beating around the bush. And a positive, as we'll end this and you'll go into the police report, is, I heard someone say, and it was really cool. They said, I mean, not cool, it was special. It was, I think I even shed a tear, even though I'm a gangster, I don't cry. But
Sorry.
This is amazing to see the city activate like this and no one had to die.
That's very true.
And that is the things that we're doing here in the city of Fort Worth. And we need more of you to be a part of it.
That's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I talked about the past flare-ups, they were because people died.
Yeah. So now we are to where, now past the council meeting. Go ahead.
Yes, so just a day or two after, both Star-Telegram and Fort Worth Report put out articles that looked into the police report that Mattie Parker claimed pointed to Patrice leaving the casket on her lawn. And surprise, surprise, the police report shows there's no link between Patrice and this casket.
That is like, there was no video evidence of the people that had video of Patrice Jones did not match her appearance. And that, like, one, I want to also give a shout out to Star-Telegram.
Yes,
for
Harrison, yeah.
Yes, Harrison Mantis has been doing excellent reporting on what happened. And it's nice to see, like, this is to me also where I'm feeling progress. It's like the other big win is like the normalization of actually talking about the dangers and like what we're actually seeing. Like, I think even Cecil at Fort Worth and like documenting the grassroots organizing, the activism of the people. But I thought the Star-Telegram being the first to break the police report and have a very strong title and unapologetically, I mean, ended the story about Patrice after the city council with, we had no remarks from the mayor as she walked out of the building into her car and closed the door and just walked off. You know, it was like, it was a chapter book to me of the closing of the Fort Worth that we all knew before this moment. And that was, to have Star-Telegram do that, let's be clear, I think the Fort Worth report got a little shaky. And I think that I'm a little concerned about the leadership of Fort Worth Report. Trust me, I love everyone who works at the Fort Worth Report. But the leadership needs to know that they have to be bold too. That's all I'll say.
That's what we rely on journalism for.
That they ended up posting the report out, but the way they did it, you can tell there's some shaky fear of speaking out to power.
So a perfect example. The difference is that Star-Telegram's headline said, "Police report casts doubt on Fort Worth mayor's claims about casket incident." Pretty straightforward. And then Fort Worth Report's headline says, "Investigation into casket left outside Fort Worth mayor's home detailed in police report."
Yeah.
Buried the headline there.
Yeah, and then even if you just read it, it was like, oh, you really don't want to say what needs to be said. And that's where I think Harrison's article did say what needed to be said. And again, I'm going to give Harrison Mantis credit here. To me, that article is going to be the history article that talks about when the moment of Fort Worth shifted. You can read that right there and understand what happened in October of 2025. And that's just a great way for all of us to now start activating to what kind of world we want, because we had 78 people sign up. That was more than DEI. And there's this momentum happening. We got no kings. We got more things to stand up for. Arlington's standing up for. So I guess we can start moving into some of the short stories and all the other things that are going on.
Yeah. Well, before we move on, I just wanted to say one quick thing. If for some reason Mayor Mattie Parker is listening, or her friends can share this with her, is I want to make it clear that we don't want you to lose. We want everyone to win. I would love it if we could all be happy with our mayor. That if our mayor stood up for the right thing, and when you aren't holding yourself accountable for lying about community leaders, or overreacting in a meeting, or just partnering with the far right in a time that is so crucial that we stand up against fascism, that's when we're demanding that you do better. You made a mistake, and it's important to apologize and hold yourself accountable and try and do better. And that's why we go speak at public comment, is we want to hold our city leaders accountable to do the right thing, to stand up for the most vulnerable in our city and protect our rights in this very crucial time in Fort Worth's history. So
I so hated that take.
This is Ann and Wesley trying to be nice.
Yeah, I hate
because I would probably endorse that
I
as
do
well.
think it's true, though. I would love if we could all support city council, but they're doing the wrong thing constantly.
Okay.
You didn't read his notes and know that he was going to say that. I did. I knew you would have a reaction. It says right here, Wesley's point, and then it's exactly what he just said. I'm like, oh, God, EJ's head's about to fly off his body.
That is such the wrong answer. No, you lost. You're gone.
Yeah.
You're no longer should be the mayor of Fort Worth.
I agree that if you want to continue being mayor of Fort Worth.
No, see, you're messing up. Here, Mattie, let's go straight. Mattie, let's go straight. Mattie, let's go straight into the camera. Mattie, let's go straight into the camera. I've been doing this for 5 years. For the first 2 years, I talked about your potential. I said this woman in that Texas Tribune article in 2022, when you were fighting for Medicaid, when you were fighting for LGBTQ, when you were saying I couldn't run a Republican primary and look myself in the mirror. When that Mattie was here, we thought that you were going to create and be bold enough to blaze a new path for the Republican Party. And maybe in 2028, we're talking about what Pete Buttigieg did in South Bend and with Democrats, you did in Fort Worth with Republicans, and y'all could be facing off as the next presidents of the United States, because that is how I talked about you. And so now I've showed up because I'm like, oh, you did not become that person because you started going into accepting mercy culture, not signing on to the Chris Nettles resolution when we're trying to stand for racial gerrymandering against Tim O'Hare. You ended up cracking. And so you lost. It's time for you to go. You tried, but it didn't work. So this is not, EJ has not always been like this on the pod about Mattie Parker or the Fort Worth Way. No, let's be 100% clear.
No, it's true.
This is me growing and learning as the person who's done 230 episodes about the city, that I am like this because I believe every single person in Fort Worth needs to be like this. And if you see the shift of what's happening, if that someone like Mattie Parker can get eaten away to this, what do you think about yourself? Every single person who's trying to be nice about it and all this stuff. And I think that is so wrong. We have an opportunity to now go at it boldly, unapologetically, because we see what happens when we think they're going to get us out of this. They didn't. They became the beast in the mirror.
Yeah. I mean, we just talked about it for 30 minutes.
But then you over here put a cherry on top and do the I love you. And that's the...
No, I do not.
No, but anyways, I think my point should stay in there. If you keep yours, that's up to you.
Yeah, that's a hard part because I was fully planning to cut myself out of it, but then that was one of your best rants ever. So
you're probably gonna have to leave yourself in there in order to him.
Yeah.
To have that
well, people needs to know this is good because I think this is truly the battle. When we have the Fort Worth Way conversation, this kid grew up in Fort Worth, and what he did is what I call Fort Worth Way. That's what I call Fort Worth Way. Is able to let's massage it back to settledness. That to me is a part of the full Fort Worth. It's not the whole Fort Worth, but it's a piece of the pie. And I think that if we can keep that in there, it's an example how we have to kind of unleash that and dissolve that from us and start stepping into the moment that we're in.
Well, and I'll just add that I think both can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
I think that we can be nice and make change, but I think we also need to step boldly. Even if we're going to continue to be nice, I'm not going to change who I am as a person. I'm going to continue to be nice in everything that I do. I'll hold people accountable. I'll speak truth, but I'm not going to be mean. But I invite everyone to come and step into this in whatever way they can. And as long as it's not taking us back, then I think that you're welcome to join.
I did a great thing in here that explained my frustration with this earlier. And if this doesn't land, we could take this out. But I said, to me, the example is right, if you were in a room right now, if you were outside right now and downtown Fort Worth and someone was getting stabbed, I'm like, what the fuck, bro? No. And I'm trying to beat this motherfucker's ass. Where I think everyone else in Fort Worth still is like, are they acting? Is that a rubber knife? Maybe this is cosplay. And that, to me, is the problem. Now, you can call it EJ not being nice. I think we're in that kind of moment where you're either in the battle or you're not. But I understand that it takes time. And that is okay. And I could be wrong. And EJ could have been over dramatic. But I'd rather be over dramatic on standing up for democracy than chilling about it. So I will take the weight and loss if I'm wrong and EJ was over the top. My wife says I'm dramatic every single day, so it's okay.
I think it's fine to be dramatic. I think it's fine to be over the top. I think it's also okay to come to the battle and be part of the battle and not have everybody act in exactly the same way. That's all. It's still okay to come and fight the fight in the way that you fight the fight.
But when you're in an actual battle, and when there's an actual battle happening, like in a physical battle, everyone is, the people who are sitting on the fence are the ones who don't make the battle. The people who make the battle, you got to go protect. You got to go. And we are in that mode.
Not everybody is set up to do that. I was raised by Quakers. You turn the other cheek no matter what. Even if somebody is attacking someone that you love, you don't use violence in any way, fashion, or form. So I mean,
but it's not. I mean, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be violence. It just has to set the tone that the place is on fire. That's all I'm saying. I'm pretty sure if we were with Quakers and a house was on fire, they would be like,
not violent. Putting out a fire is not violent. No, but somebody said they thought
what I'm doing is not violent. I am acting as if Fort Worth is on fire. Regardless if you're a Quaker, a Mormon, a Muslim, an atheist, it don't matter. The fucking place is on fire.
We're gonna have to have an explicit rating on this. If we
I genuinely don't know what to do with this.
But but again, I think this is where I am in the city, and I know I ruffle feathers with a lot of people in the city who don't agree. And that is fine. That's why we got Ann and Wesley on the show, for you guys to keep coming back. But I also know that this is the part of the layer of the democracy lasagna in Fort Worth that was missing. And now it's here to support everyone else who is these lovely layers. But the foundational meat of the lasagna has just been building. It's been cooking. And what Tuesday showed, it is rising. All right. And that is what we're bringing, is that layer that Fort Worth has missed this whole time.
Democracy lasagna.
So one of the final things for this topic was that there was another Star Telegram opinion piece from Bradford Davis entitled "Mayor Mattie Parker Should Listen to Her Own Words as She Faces Her Critics." And I think it very much kind of lays out some of the things that she said in the beginning that made us believe that she was going to carry herself in a certain way and stand up for certain things, and that if she were to go back and listen to herself, kind of what EJ just laid out for why he had hope in the beginning, it's kind of very clearly laid out in that opinion piece. So we encourage you to listen to that as well.
Yep, it's a great article.
So moving on to short stories, the first short story that we're going to talk about is actually in Arlington, because Arlington residents are fighting to protect LGBTQ rights. The article is the Arlington Council delayed a decision on amending LGBTQ anti-discrimination ordinance. So instead of just wiping it out, they, I think, have discussed it twice now, and they again voted to delay making this change where they just remove gender identity and LGBTQ identity from their discrimination ordinance for protection.
And is this tied to the same bullshit that we just had to deal with DEI in Fort Worth?
It dictates coming down from the federal government about what you're allowed to have. Kind of to your point at council the other day that city staff are being required to wipe things off of the website. So I think it is definitely that. And I think in the history that I went back to where we started, Fort Worth was one of the first cities to have LGBTQ stuff in our anti-discrimination.
Which is something we should all be very proud of.
Yes, absolutely. But it's all being whittled away, which is really, really frustrating. But it was good to see Arlington at least stand up and say they weren't ready to move forward with this, and they're trying to figure out a way not to. And their mayor has been very outspoken behind LGBTQ rights and
I've been so surprised. He got Trixie Mattel for Arlington Pride. Yeah.
But I also think if you ask Arlington people, they're not happy with how he's handling it. Like, they want like a legit, like, dude, let's just start standing up and fight against this. Like, fix it rather than keep pushing it. Like, I based off of my expression now, I again, that's a couple people I spoke to from Arlington, because we have to talk about Arlington because they're a part of 817. So the 817 podcast. The part that got me why I said to you guys this needs to be a short story is because 44 people spoke in opposition. Arlington is around 400,000 people. You know, it's the 40th to 50th largest city in America, right somewhere in there. So if you compare that to, you know, that would be like us getting 88 to 100 people speaking. So when you talk about how active now Arlington is, like, it shows that it's not just Fort Worth people frustrated with the way Texas is running and the way our county is running and the way our cities are running. And so you're having this progressive movement also happening in a place like Arlington, who actually is more ready for change than Fort Worth, in the sense of, like, they vote more blue already. I think I saw where they were ranked the 4th most diverse city in America.
That's so surprising.
And yet, like, their council is more red than ours, so they have so much more, like, potential, and the fact that these young people, shout out to Sunrise Tarrant, Young Democrats, everyone else who was there. There's a ton of great energy happening, and why this is important to watch is they have an election in 2026. It's in May, I think, and so we got to 2027. I'm interested to see what candidates pop out. Maybe we even have them on the show, but we got to start advocating because maybe Arlington could be the start of what we see in Fort Worth, but time will tell. So
and
kudos
Arlington
to Arlington.
has term limits too, so there's more turnover. You don't get an incumbent that then is there forever because incumbents are harder to beat. So they have those term limits over there. So I think a few people are terming out, some good ones. So it's important to have other good candidates to step into those roles.
Absolutely.
So our second short story is an interesting story. It's talking about White Settlement Road possibly getting the name changed. And there's been a lot of discussion about this on our Discord and on social media. And I know that the article states that White Settlement Road name change is up for a Fort Worth City Council vote. And I believe that it is being pushed forward at this point because of a major development that is being proposed on what is currently called White Settlement Road at the intersection of University and White Settlement, where the Fort Worth ISD administration building used to be. There's going to be a very large development there that is backed by a family in Fort Worth that is very prominent. And so there's been some consternation about, oh, well, of course, that this development is coming. Now we're going to rename the road. But it's been something that's been discussed for years. Literally, when we built the last time was when I was on council and we had just completed the quote unquote White Settlement Bridge, because that's the name of the road. There was discussion about wanting to not call that the White Settlement Bridge and maybe changing the name at that point. And I know there were a group of business owners along that corridor that were not in total agreement about wanting the change or not wanting the change. Some of them didn't want to change their addresses for their businesses, all that kind of stuff. And when you change road names, you have to get petitions that have a certain percentage, I believe, of people who live along the stretch to agree to the name change. So I assume that with the acquiring of additional land for this development, maybe they have that already. And then White Settlement, the city itself, has had actual votes where they have decided not to rename themselves.
To be fair, those votes were very close.
Were they? It's been so long ago, I don't know that I was actually paying attention.
I'm actually shocked when I be talking to some black people in Fort Worth. I'm like, where you live? Oh, out by White Settlement. I'm like, wow. So maybe it's busting out in White Settlement. I don't even know.
So I have to drive this street every single day. It's right by my neighborhood, and I used to live on White Settlement, and I hated writing my address on anything. Like, it's such an embarrassment to have a street with this name in Fort Worth.
And you're mad at me calling you the Fort Worth Way?
Dude.
You pitch yourself on this one. You telling him, now Wesley lives on White Settlement.
He doesn't anymore.
I know. He hates this episode.
One thing that's interesting, though, is that Dancing Heart Iglesias, who owns Flipstone Vintage, she is Native American. I met her when she spoke at Sparkfest as one of the storytellers. Her and her cousin who run that business, they almost love being on White Settlement because, they're taking back the name from, a street based on colonizers, and they're proud to,
to have their native-owned business on that street. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw a couple of interviews with them. I think the concern that was brought up is, whitewashing history. Yeah. Not being true to what has happened in the past by just making it go away. So I think instead of just doing it silently and quietly, just like when there is art that has problematic images in it, or when people would argue about taking down sculptures and statues, having plaques that explain the history so that it's not just making that history go away, or naming it something that, rises up people who have been hurt in the past because of systemic racism.
I think my personal issue with it, and where I think the note needs to be, is that we are changing it because of now it feels like it's bad for business. It's kind of like when we change stuff for equity, we never actually change it because we value equity and inclusion. We wrap it with it's good for business. When you listen to Mattie Parker's LGBTQ Pride Proclamation, it's about how much economic output queer entrepreneurs give the community. I'm like, who cares?
They have value beyond that.
Yeah, and it's that is because right, I think this is in Macy Hill's district, who is pro changing it, but the pro changing it is, we'll see, right? We will see. but it's good for business. It's about, this is good for business.
Yeah, that particular part. So they're not even talking about changing all of White Settlement Road. They're mainly talking about just changing from University to downtown where this new development go. And the name they're pitching out is West Side Drive. But that section of it, that's in Elizabeth Beck's district. I was surprised to learn because it's so
there's
close.
a fighter there, so there we go.
Yeah, so I don't know. I hope that
I think
there's
they should rename the entire thing that's
too.
in the city of Fort Worth. It
Yep.
doesn't make, I mean, when you have name changes, I thought that was actually something that the fire department speaks out against, because when you name roads in Fort Worth, you have to go and run those addresses and road names by the fire department. And for them to be able to make sure they find places, having a road name change on a contiguous road is problematic. So I think that every part of it in Fort Worth should have the same
What
name.
about, like,
It's funny that you mentioned that because that same intersection is where University changes to Northside Drive.
That's true.
how do you feel about like Colonial Drive? So we can keep the history. Like, you know where it happened. This is where they,
Well, it's Colonial Country Club right there.
Yes. Hey, look, and you know, it's, you could just say it's, so the history's still there. Like, this is where the colonizers went and ran away when
And
things
called
happened.
it White Settlement.
Yeah. But anyways, let's keep going.
All right. So our final short story is about Fort Worth growth, and I think it's a compilation of articles because there's quite a bit talking about the rapid growth that's happening in Fort Worth. The first article is Rapid Growth, High-Priced Housing Costs Influence Fort Worth's Future. And that was very interesting to me because they have a map showing the highest price zip code in the city, and it's the zip code I live in. It's a bright red dot, which has gotten even more expensive. But what's also interesting is just a discussion about the need to be intentional with this massive growth so that we can continue to support a mix of housing types and a mix of housing types across the entire city so that people have choices about where they live, and we have mixed income housing dispersed throughout the community. So I think that, and then also anti-displacement efforts need to be a part of the conversation as well. So this article dives into the development pressures that come from Panther Island and stockyards squeezing the north side. It also, there's a couple articles talking about Evans and Rosedale. The urban village has some additional funding coming to it. So these are all areas that have been underserved in the past. And now, because of the rapid growth that's occurring and the desire to have some of that growth happen in the core of the city, inside the loop, in a way that's more sustainable, closer to transit, closer to being able to make mixed-use walkable areas, we have to be very intentional to make sure that people who are there now in neighborhoods that have continued to have some affordability to them can continue to be there and benefit from the growth and the improvements and the betterment that is to come.
I think it's a really great article that I hope everyone takes a good read of because it'll help shape so much of your understanding of how land is used in Fort Worth and what the future of that can be and what we should be advocating for, because the way land is used dictates what possibilities there are in the city. And so I think it's very helpful to understand that.
And I think in the past, we've had some areas that have gotten popular and hot quickly, and we haven't had in place some of those anti-gentrification, anti-displacement
You're speaking about West
efforts.
Summit? What are you speaking about?
Near South Side.
Okay.
Because you have conservation districts, historic districts, then they become very desirable, and then the prices go up. So you have to have intentionality in order to make sure that people are protected that want to stay and benefit from those improvements. And I think that we have things that we've done in the past that could be done better in areas as they improve going forward. So another article about that touches on Fort Worth growth is for businesses along Berry Street. The title is "Less Parking is a Small Price to Pay as TCU Grows." And so I think right now there is a pinch of parking because there is a lot of surface parking that is being developed along Berry Street, which will incorporate parking going forward. So I don't want everybody to lose their minds about losing surface parking because this is a much better development type for that street, to have a mix of uses, to incorporate structured parking so that you're not just having a sea of surface parking along an active street. And I've also noticed an uptick, which people better start getting used to it, of pedestrians crossing Berry Street. And it is designed to allow them to do that safely, but because drivers in Texas don't give a crap about pedestrians, they tend to not stop for them, even if they have the right of way in the crosswalk. So that's something we're going to have to work on. But the development is occurring. It is taking away parking right now, but in the end, there will be mixed use development along Berry Street that has been in the works planning wise since the urban villages were created back in 2007. So it's interesting to see that development finally coming to fruition. And it'll have more housing for students.
Which is nice. Yeah. When I read this headline, I was like, man, I bet Anne loves that. It's so rare that you see, like, business owners in particularly saying that, yes, we understand less parking will lead to a better long-term outcome. Yeah. It's like more of that. Like, the more walkability, the more, chance of interactions, more chance people stumble upon your business, more people that come in. Like, it's just better.
Yep.
Well, the part of the reason there's been so many growth stories in this episode and the past few is that Fort Worth Report is getting ready for their growth summit. It's the first time they're doing it. It is going to be Thursday, October 23rd from 8 a.m. to 1:30 at TCC Trinity Campus. I don't know why they start all their events so early. But it looks like it'll be...
So that people can go to work after. Usually, because it's usually just the breakfast meeting and it's wrapped up before 9 o'clock and then people can get to work. But this is a half-day summit on growth. And all these articles have been leading up to that. And then they're going to have a panel talking about it as well. So, yeah, it's encouraging to see...
Are you going to be there?
People talk... Yeah, I've signed up.
I'm going to be in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
I don't leave till the 25th, so I'll be there on the 23rd. I'll be a little late because I've got another breakfast meeting that starts at 7:30.
We'll get a recap.
Yes, absolutely. I'll report back on that. Perfect. So that wraps up our short stories, and we can now go into wins and losses.
So we know No Kings is a win. We will be there, MCing, kicking it off. So we'll see what happens. We'll report back in like 2 weeks because you guys, I guess a loss is you guys are, it's not a loss. You need a break. But so we're going to have to report back on how No Kings goes in 2 weeks, but we're excited to be doing it.
Yep, absolutely.
A win that I wanted to talk about is that this weekend, The Birds opens at Amphibian Stage, and it's a spooky good time. Highly recommend, especially if you've never been to Amphibian before. It's such a good example of the talent, the spectacle of it. Definitely recommend. And then also, right down the street at Stage West, it's opening weekend for Ride the Cyclone, which I helped out on. I helped do a short film and helped out with some puppets and some little magic tricks. So that one is wackadoodle. If you want to see a completely bonkers musical, go check that one out.
I love it. Always, every time I go, always a good time.
So another win is that Fort Worth NAACP has honored Broadway Baptist Church, their Tarrant Faith and Justice Coalition, which is a group of people that had been showing up before we started showing up in person at Commissioner's Court and holding people accountable for jail deaths and all kinds of things that affect people's lives in Fort Worth. So they've been recognized by the Fort Worth NAACP.
Great example of white allyship.
There we go.
There you go. And then finally, on wins, there was an announcement this week that State Representative Gina Hinojosa has launched a bid for Texas governor, which I'm kind of excited about. I think that getting excited about a candidate in Texas has been a dry, rare opportunity. I'm tired of going down to the state capitol and remembering Ann Richards and that having be the only thing that you can just hearken back to. Yeah. So the idea of having somebody who's throwing their hat in the ring to be our governor, who will clearly be better than the governor we have, is exciting to me.
And Gina Hinojosa, again, is a Latina. Texas is majority Latino. So this is a perfect time to activate, especially with all the agreements that our governor today is doing to harm and pit fear into brown people in Texas. So I like the idea of this strong woman going up against Governor Abbott. She comes from obviously a legacy. Her dad was the Democratic chair the last few years before Kendall Scudder. So we'll see how it moves. And I think we're still early enough where people are picking up their narrative. Shout out to also, I see Tellerico trying. I think he's been trying to integrate some black and brown coalition building. And so I think it's exciting to see where their narratives go and who excites who. She's from South Texas. We need that base lifted up. So we'll see.
And for losses, we have an article here titled, Investigation Finds No Criminal Wrongdoing in Hunger, Thirst, Death in Tarrant County Jails. So, as y'all have probably heard plenty, that Tarrant County has just an insane amount of jail deaths for our size. And when you read this article, you realize how pathetic it is that they're claiming hey, we were just following procedure. They just starved to death on their own. And it's like, that should never be an excuse. Like, this person, it sounds like they were having a mental episode, and if they're refusing to eat, if they're dying of thirst, that is a medical emergency that they're in your care, and you cannot let someone die on your behalf. And I just hate how pathetic it is, these excuses coming from the jail, and I hope that there's never a single more jail death.
So our second loss is that Tarrant County has awarded a nonprofit $2.3 million to contract to replace human services. And I think we mentioned previously that Tarrant County had voted to eliminate human services and that they were going to be contracting with nonprofits. And I think there was some concern raised in the beginning about the number of nonprofits that exist in Tarrant County that actually have the capacity to carry forward with these services, because these usually are grants that are reimbursement grants. So you have to have the money in the bank already in order to do the services up front, and then you have to file a lot of paperwork to be reimbursed. And there's not a lot of nonprofits that have the capability of doing that. In this case, it is the Center for Transforming Lives that has been tasked with this job. And they are a pretty incredible organization that does some really amazing work.
Absolutely.
They have been focused mainly on single mothers and children. I think they're going to have to expand that because these county services were beyond just single women and children. And it would have been nice if the county had had some forethought to do this ahead of time and analyze exactly what the capacity was going to be and what was necessary in order to ramp these services up so that there would be no gap between what the county was doing and now what the nonprofit is going to do. And so I think that's the loss. We're not saying it's a loss that a great organization is going to be doing important work in our community. I want to make that clear. But definitely, these are the kind of decisions that elected officials need to think out ahead of time or allow their staff to do some research and figure out what the path forward is going to be before just pulling the plug and trying to switch on another switch without having it all ready to go.
Yeah. Well, I also do want to say that part of why this is a loss is that now we have a nonprofit doing something that the government should be doing and was doing. And if they were annoyed that they weren't doing it well enough, the solution isn't get rid of it and pay more for less through a nonprofit. The solution is let's fix the government and make it do what we want it to do.
So we have a couple of actions for folks this week, something that I have been sharing with people that they needed to get ready for a long time, because the city announced that they were going to be having public meetings about their bond for 2026. And that's a bond election in which we all will get the opportunity to vote on. But before they put it out for a vote in May of next year, they have public meetings to let us know how they are planning to put the categories together for what the bond will go towards. And these public meetings were originally scheduled for August through October, and we got clearly into October before none of them had been published anywhere. So I think they adjusted the schedule, and now there are meetings that you can attend in every council district. They are on the city's website under the Connect Fort Worth city bond for 2026. You can find out what meeting is happening where. You can attend ones in any district that is convenient to you. You don't have to go to your council district. You can go to more than one of them. And what I'm asking people to support is the fact that there is some money in there for affordable housing, which is something Fort Worth has never done in a bond. And so I'm encouraging people to show up and speak in favor of that money. It would be nice if it was a little more, because it's a small amount compared to what other cities do when it comes to supporting affordable housing through bond dollars. But I would encourage folks to go be informed and educated. You can give feedback through an online interactive app that they have available for you. And then there's also an exercise that shows you, like, if you remove this, then what other things have to be cut back if you want them to add something in, so that people can get a real sense of kind of the hard decisions that councils have to make around these decisions. So I encourage people to go check that out. And then the second thing is
I would say check it out quick, because they only announced these like yesterday, and the first one for my district is on Monday.
Yes.
So they're happening very fast.
There's some meetings that go into November, but there's several that are happening the end of October. So it's end of October, early November. Go check out the dates and go to a meeting. Mm-hmm. The other action is that we have some constitutional amendments on the ballot for November 4th. I think there's 17 of them.
There are 17, and early voting starts very soon.
Monday.
Yep.
So that's an action. Mm-hmm. Go vote. Get out and vote.
Yep.
For Taylor Remmett, if you live in Senate District 9.
Yep.
He's going against Patriot Mobile, so let's make this happen and not have someone lead us who supports book bans.
Yep. So Senate District 9 is the only vote for a person that's on this ballot, and then the rest of it is these 17 constitutional amendments, which we had talked about maybe doing a deep dive into.
Yep, I really wanted to. It was a crazy week, though.
But it's also it's hard to explain them, I think.
For sure. That's why I wanted to do a whole episode.
It's hard to understand. Yep. I think we are providing a couple links to some resources of other folks that have done a deep dive and are making some suggestions. And one suggestion was that we vote against all of them. A couple of people have suggested that we just vote against all of them to send a message to the state that we're not interested in carrying forward anything that they want to do. But I think that there's some that do benefit people. So
yeah,
I would encourage people to get informed and then vote.
What I'm understanding is that the ones that would benefit is actually the ones to vote no to. So like, we'll just vote no to all of them.
I mean, we didn't read them enough to get into this detail,
did.
but I know that there's ones... There's ones that limit the ability to ever tax in certain ways, which is, I think, a bad thing because it limits future legislators' ability to easily decide if there's another way to get financial resources to run the state.
Yeah.
So we're going to include links to Star Telegram's voter guide and, more importantly, Texas Tribune's voter guide. So it has the exact language that you'll see on the ballot, but also breakdowns onto what the hell that means. I'd say if you look at any other voter guides, be very cautious because the most in-depth one I found was from a conservative think tank. So there's some landmines there. And I think if you feel inclined to vote no on all of them, that's one way to do it. But I think there is some nuance in some of these that is worth a deeper look into. You know, some of them sound good but have some really negative impacts. Some of them sound neutral but have some really good impacts. So I'd say do your due diligence as a voter and you know.
Or call your friend that does and have them send you their suggestions.
Yeah, Mike, what is yours? Like, do you have it that
I didn't
yet?
write down a breakdown, but between now and when this episode comes out, I can try
yours.
and put on screen here what my breakdown is. So if you're
Nice.
listening, I'm sorry. go follow on YouTube so you can see what my breakdown is.
All right, beautiful people, there you have it. An excellent episode of the 817 podcast. I actually like this format. Let EJ go buck wild, and then the people who want the real meat and potatoes, they stay through. And so that was really good to see that flow. Have a great weekend. I guess great week without us, and a weekend because we won't have us because you're going to be in Edinburgh.
Scotland. Yep.
Scotland. Wow.
Yep.
And
I'm just going to California to see my kids and my mom.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. I'll get a break. I think I'm just going to chill. But
You should definitely do that.
Yes.
yes, but everyone subscribe, like, share with a friend. The bigger the movement, the more possible things happen. See you on the next episode.